What's up, everybody? Today is topic number 34. Sorry about that glitch. So today for topic 34, I'm going to cover something that's a little bit more serious, which is so-called language abuse. Now, you may be thinking language abuse, and the first thing that comes to your mind is definitely, am I going to talk about vulgarity? Am I going to talk about bad words? But that, of course, I'm going to cover about that. But I'll be covering a more full-rounded aspect about how languages today have been abused. But at the same time, other than vulgarity, I'm also going to cover on how grammars and the originality of these languages have no longer been emphasized. So I will focus this topic into two parts, which this part is going to be part one. So for part one, I'm basically going to talk about just the general localizing of languages. And in the part two, only then I'll cover about how language is actually being abused. So for this one, I will call this a language abuse at a slight manner, not to a point of abuse, but to me it's kind of abuse because I take it sensitively, which is the so-called localizing of languages. Now we know that languages are very, very cross-cultural, and for example, just take English for example. When English enters a new country, it will definitely be localized. Like in Malaysia, we talk about food names being localized, and we have slang words. And it's not just in Malaysia, but in any single country, even English-speaking countries themselves will have certain slang words when they use English. Of course, slang words have two types. The formal one, which is the one that is actually in the dictionary, and most of the time these slang words are classified into British English and American English. Sometimes there's even Australian English. For example, in Britain they say lift, in America they say elevator. And in sense of pronunciation, the British people would say butter, while Americans will say butter. This is a kind of a localizing of languages, but this is a more formal aspect. Where we talk about a less formal way is our so-called urban languages. Now, urban languages are more of the things that we speak socially, like swag, or most of the time, these words are being given their new definitions, which is not actually in the dictionary. Let's use something that is not too pleasant, which is basically SHIT. You know what I mean. Now basically, SHIT is basically about human droppings. Nothing vulgar. It's basically just the defecation product of human beings. But often so it is being used today to be defined as something that is literally worse than worst. But it's a very vulgar, very uncivil way of talking, similar to other cases like the F word, CUNT, and BASTARD. Which I'm not going to say it because it's going to be the internet, which this I will cover next time. Now, these localizing of languages, if you ask me, is it okay to localize language? Now, for me personally, it's up to how you use it. Now, if localizing the language provides an easy usage for the locals, which, for example, we cannot just simply say nasi lemak and put it into coconut rice, or we cannot just simply say teh tarik as milk tea, because it is the so-called the local culture way of expressing something. So if this is the case, to me it's not an issue because it has been named that way. You cannot just simply change names because there's a reason why certain cultures put names into that way. Of course, I'm not going to go into detail because you get bored of it. But these are just an example of localizing of languages, which is typically just okay. Another reason why localizing language to me is alright is because it is an understanding. Because imagine if a person comes to Malaysia and you talk about coconut rice and you teach a foreigner to say coconut rice when they are going to a nasi lemak stall, they are not going to get anything because in Malaysia we never say nasi lemak as coconut rice. It's a simple thing. So on this aspect, it is a platform for a common understanding, which is why localizing of these languages actually occur. And when it comes to localizing these languages, it is also an ease of communication, which is kind of a duplicate of what I just mentioned just now. Now, let's talk about why I feel that localizing is not good. Now, localizing is not good in the sense of it's ending up making the language very, very personal. It goes to a point where people no longer understand. Like for example, in Malaysia, we always love to say, "You did not jio me." or sometimes even when we text, we say J-I-O, Jio. Now, Jio, if you speak in Hokkien, Jio is banana, Kim Jio, banana. But often so people use Jio as the meaning of invite. You did not invite me, you did not Jio me. Now, this to me, this is also so-called localizing, but to me it's already become somewhat unprofessional. How do you know it's unprofessional? It's very simple. You would say nasi lemak in a formal letter. If you write a letter to your boss and you say, what food is prepared, you will say nasi lemak bravely, because it's accepted. But you will not say you did not Jio me, because Jio is not an official language, which to me is not a good thing, because if you keep on using local slang words, even to a point where you no longer know how to use the actual language, it is a sign that localizing of the language is not a good thing. And many Malaysians I actually heard actually have a bad habit of accidentally using slang words or describing way in the Malaysian version to a point where people overseas cannot understand, leading to misunderstandings and cultural conflicts, which is another reason why I'm not too agreeing with localizing of languages. Now, if you're asking me whether I'm on the agreeing side or the disagree side, to me, I'm going to talk into context. If localizing a language for me is on, like what I mentioned, a common understanding, fine, let it be. Cultures are different. But if you ask me, but however, if you're localizing a language for the sake, how should I put it? If you're localizing a language to hide your lack of intelligence, then it to me is a so-called abuse of language. But to me, it's not too bad, because I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying you're covering just to ensure you don't look too bad. But it is not a good thing, because people can easily expose you for your lack of intelligence. And often so, people are judged on how professional or how good they are in the language and the type of presentation of language that they actually present to people. So that's basically just my take on language abuse in sense of localizing the language. Now this is the less severe. I will cover the more severe one when it comes to vulgarity and profanity and swearing in part 2. So I want to thank you so much for bearing with me for this 7.5 minutes, and I'll see you in part 2 in my next video.